So today I'm going to teach you how to animate this character so his mouth, head, and arms move around in real time. With a little ingenuity, you'll be able to bring your own animated Scratch avatar into Zoom and Google Meet calls. Stay tuned. So we're not doing a ton of coding today. What we're actually going to do is have a look under the hood at this new piece of software I've created called Real-Time Animation. You can find the link down below, or you can just type in the numbers right up above here and get into this project. So it'll already be built by the time you open it up, and your mission will be to find a creative way to use it in your own projects. And definitely I would encourage you to modify the graphics as well. So the graphics in this case, I've built the background and the foreground office space just using a photo editing tool. But the character itself is designed by Paddler Games, a new Chromeworks member who's also a fairly well-known Scratcher out in the community. And this is his iconic character that represents him. And I thought I'd use him for the animation right now, just to welcome Paddler to the Chromeworks community. Anyway, so let's have a look inside here. So I've got a couple of sprites here. Some of them are just background ones. I've got a nice background here that just looks like a blurry office. I just downloaded this. This is just a Zoom background that I've downloaded and add a little bit of a blur effect to make it a little look a little more like it's out of focus in the camera. In the foreground, I have another sprite here that is just a desk in front of the character here, so that the character won't be cut off at the bottom, and it'll look a little more like he's speaking in a Zoom call or something. And then I've got my two pieces of the character. So I've got the head and body animated separately, and I've done that so that I can move the head and body independently of each other. So, otherwise, I would have to have a piece of code for him smiling with his arms up and a piece of code for him smiling with his arms down, etc. It just makes things more complicated. So our character is going to be running through two different sets of animations. One for the head for different kinds of poses that he can do with his head, and another one for his body. And those two will be independent of each other. Let's have a look at some of these costumes. So this is the static costume, which is just the default look. And then I've just got him going through a couple of different animations here. Here's a blink animation that will make him close his eyes and then open them up again. Here's a talk animation. It's just a bunch of random facial features that we're going to have him cycle through as he talks, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. And we've also got a smile here, which is a two-part animation. He gets into it, and then he gets into a full smile here. Over on the body, there's all kinds of different animations you could do here to move this body around, but I just decided to go with something simple. So I've got this animation called static, which is our character just standing here. And then I've got a couple of animations that have him going into a shrug, like this, and back down again. And another one that makes him move his arm up to the right. And another one that makes him move his left, well, actually his right arm move up, but I'm calling it left because it's on the left side of the image. All right, so we're going to be able to animate his arms by moving the arrow keys around, and we're also going to be able to bob his head around by pushing down on the arrow keys. So let's have a look at the body, which is a little more straightforward than the head. There's fewer options here. We're going to start off with a piece of code here that negates all the other actions. What we're going to want to do is if we let go of the keyboard, we're going to want to reset all the movements back to the static position again to signal that we don't really want to do anything during that time. So it's fairly straightforward. We're just going to say when green flag clicked, and we're just going to forever be checking to see if now we've got a not with an any key in here. So what this really does is it's looking for no keyboard input. It'll only be triggered if you're not hitting any keys on the keyboard. And so if you've let go of the keyboard, you don't want your character doing anything, then we're going to switch to that static costume. And we're also going to send out a broadcast here that says stop other scripts in this sprite. You might remember that that block is here under stop all, and you can modify this block to say stop this script or stop other scripts in this sprite. So what that's going to do is it's going to stop any other animations that are in process while when we've let go of the keyboard, so that everything kind of nicely resets itself back to the default again. And it's just constantly going to be checking for that. Okay, so now we just have a bunch of keyboard inputs depending on what it is that we want to do here. So as I said, I've got a arms up movement, and I've got a left arm and a right arm movement. And what we're going to do is map each of those onto a keyboard here. So let's start with the up arrow key. So when I press the up arrow key, we're going to want to start in the static position here, and then we're going to move our arms up from there. So this project is all about animating costumes in sprites in a timed kind of way so that certain costumes are visible when there's certain keyboard inputs. So in order to control that, instead of reinventing the wheel here, we're going to use a piece of code that I've already created for you. You might recall I put out a project a few months ago called the ChromeWorks Digital Storytelling Toolkit. A really handy set of custom blocks that you can use to control all sorts of aspects of your digital storytelling projects. It'll help you, it has tools here to help you change your animations around and do special effects like fading in and out, wiggling, jumping and throwing things, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And there's a full tutorial in here. If you just click the green flag in this project, it'll walk you through how to use each of these different custom blocks in your own storytelling projects. The ones we're going to use today are called animate frames to costume and animate backwards to frame. And let's get back to our original project and have a look at those and how they work in here. So the custom blocks, let's start with animate frames to costume here. What this basically does is it starts, we basically set up a starting block here, like static here, and then we just have to put in what the final frame is that we're moving to and how fast we want that animation to run in frames per second. So let's go have a look at our costumes for the waving the arms up in the air. So we start with static here, and then we have a couple of, we have actually four different costumes that lead to our character shrugging here or raising his arms up in the air. They're called shrug 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it starts on costume 2 and goes to costume 5. So those costume numbers are what we're going to want to keep track of. So we know our starting position is going to be static, and then we're going to go through 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're going to end, so it's going to costume 5. And let's just put 20 frames per second as the animation here. Now you can see when I press the up arrow key, my arms move up. Beautiful. Now we're going to want them to go back down again in a second. So what we're actually going to do here, I've got some pre-baked code here. We're just going to wait half a second, and then we're going to go back down using the sister block to this animate frames, which is animate backwards. And that just does the whole process backwards. So we go from where we are back to frame 1 at a speed of 20 frames per second. Let's try that again here. And you can see that he lifts his arms up and brings them back down again. Beautiful. All right, we just have to do the same thing with the left, right arrow keys, and I've already pre-baked the code here. It says the exact same process. When I press the left arrow key, we're going to go through the set of costumes, which is from, I believe, 9 through 13. So we start at the first left costume, left, and then go do a bunch of next costumes till we get to 13, wait half a second, and then animate it backwards again. Now that's hidden by the foreground sprite here, so let's hide that right now so you can see the whole thing in action. So there's my body without the desk covering it up, and you can see that when I hit the left arrow key, he moves his arm up and then brings it back down again. Beautiful. All right, the same thing applies to the right arrow key, and that's, again, a pretty easy process here. So let's just reattach the code here. When I hit the right arrow key, we're going to go through some different frames of animation. So we're going to go from up to 9. So it's starting at frame 6, which is right, and then go 7, 8, 9 to get the right hand up. And as you can see here, the left arm's moving quite nicely when I hit the left arrow key, and here's the right and the up. We can kind of randomly toggle through these just while we're doing our other activities. Let's say you're on a Zoom call or whatever. You can just every once in a while do a little gesture like this without really thinking about it if you just hover your fingers over the arrow key. Just a little fun thing that you can do. Okay, so let's move on to the head, which is a little bit more complicated, but really not that tricky. So over in the head sprite, we've got a bunch of different costume sequences here that we're going to start going, some of which are going to be automated and some of which are going to be controlled by keyboard inputs. So when we click the green flag, we're going to broadcast a start animating message here that's going to go out to the other sprites. We don't want any action connected to the green flag here because we're going to be starting and restopping scripts. And of course, the green flag only works when we physically click on this green flag button. We want to be able to start scripts up just having other scripts start and stop each other. So we can't use green flags for any of that. So we're just going to broadcast over to this start animating button, and that's going to start our first script up, which gets our character blinking. So let's just get some code here to get it blinking kind of randomly. We want our character blinking, not when he's talking though, because we don't want this blinking animation to interfere with the facial animation. So we're going to tell this thing to just run when our character is not talking, and then when it is running, it's just going to basically pick a random amount of time to blink. So it's going to blink and then wait a couple of seconds and then blink again. So let me show you how that works. So when I receive that start animating command, we're just going to wait 1 second so he doesn't start blinking right away. Then we're getting into a forever loop here where we're going to do this blink custom block, and let me show you what that is. So I'll just finish this up first though. So we'll put that custom block in, and then we're just going to wait a random amount of times and then come around this loop and blink again. So what happens inside this animation block? We're just again animating forwards and backwards. So we're starting from 1 and going up to 5 and then going back down to 1 again. And you can see that when I actually click on this block here to make him blink, his eyeballs quickly go down and then back up again. And he's just going to keep doing that randomly throughout the project here. Let's click the green flag and see that in action. So you see that every once in a while he just gives a little blink, and it certainly does help to create a sense of realism around the project, like he's alive here. I'm going to make this foreground visible again. There we go. Now he's sitting at his desk, and it looks like he's kind of staring at the screen. Okay, beautiful. So far, so good. So next I have a smile animation here. I showed you before. It's just 2 frames of animation. And so I'm going to connect that to the space key so that whenever I hit the space, we're going to stop the other scripts, including the blinking. And then we're going to just get into that smile animation. I didn't use the custom blocker. There's only 2 frames of animation here. We're going to go to smile and then smile 2. Once we get into smile 2, we're going to wait for me to release the keyboard. So we're going to go wait until I'm not pressing the space key, which means I've released the key, and then we're going to go back into the not smiling animation. So back to the original smile animation, then to static. And then we're going to restart the other loop for the blinking again with a broadcast start animating. All right, let's have a look at that. So there I am, and you can see that when I hit the down button on the, let's click the green flag here, make sure this is all started properly. And when I hit the space key here, you can see he shifts into a smile, and he stops blinking. And then as soon as I let go, he goes back to an ordinary animation, and then he starts blinking again. Beautiful. Okay, so the next thing we're going to want to do is move his head around a little bit to create a little more sense of realism, like this character's alive. And that's a fairly straightforward bit of code here. We're just going to say when I press the down arrow key, we're going to get into a little repeat loop here where we're rotating counterclockwise by 10 degrees and then clockwise again by 10 degrees. And let's have a look at that. So you can see his head just gives a little bob, and he's blinking and moving his arms around and looking very realistic already. So what's really going to sell this is having his lips move. Now, as I said, we created a bunch of lip-moving animations in here, and we can't actually synchronize this in the sense that we can make an ooh sound with our mouth the way that we would if we were properly animating this. So the only way we can do this in real time is by basically having it pick between a bunch of random facial movements. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have our character cycle through a bunch of lip movements connected to whether we're talking or not. And Scratch will know we're talking based on this sensing block here that's called Loudness. And once you plug this onto the screen, let me find that block. There it is, Loudness. Once we put that onto the screen, it basically activates your microphone, and it will detect how loud you're speaking into the microphone. So if I'm talking really loud and click on it, hello, you can see the number goes up to 66. And if I'm whispering, hello, 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 it's a smaller number, like 30. And if I'm silent, I'm just getting the background noises, 24 here. Okay, so 24 is the sound of my computer, so we're going to want to get louder than that sound. We're going to want to key these lip movements to start working when my loudness is greater than 30. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to, when I receive my start animating message, we're just going to get into an endless loop here where we're checking to see if my loudness is louder than 30. And if it is, we're going to stop those other sprites to make sure that that our blinking and head bobs and stuff aren't happening while we're talking here. So inside of this if statement, we're going to put a repeat until loudness is less than 20. And that's basically going to keep that animation cycling through random stuff until we get quiet again, and then it'll return us back to our default. So inside that repeat loop, we're going to put some switch costume here, which is just switch costume between random 7 to 11. So that's going to get us between those 5 different talking costumes, talk 1, talk 2, talk 3, talk 4, and talk 5. And it's just going to randomly pick one of those and always do a little wait in between. And you can see that it's working here already, actually, as I talk. So the only thing that's not happening is it's not resetting itself. But as I talk and make a noise into the microphone, the lips start moving. Beautiful. So we do also have to stop that, of course. So when we're done talking, we're going to exit out of this repeat until loop. We'll still be in this if statement here because we don't want this happening unless we've activated the lips again. And we're going to put in here another broadcast start animating, which is going to get the blinking and stuff running again. And we're also just going to switch back to our first costume, which is going to be the idle one or the static costume. There we go. And then we'll be good to go. So I'm going to get back, so I'm going to put this in here. Again, it's going to be inside, so it's going to be at the bottom underneath this repeat until loop. So once we exit this loop, we're going to broadcast, switch costume to static, and then it's going to come right back around the top here and wait again for our volume to be above 30. Well, we're already seeing it in action, but let me maximize here. And you can see that when I start talking, the lips start moving, and when I stop, we revert back to the ordinary lips again. So it's not perfect, but I think it works pretty well. Okay, so we've got our character's arms moving around now, his lips are synced, he's bobbing his head and smiling. Now the sky's the limit for the number of movements you could give your character here, but for now I think we'll stick with this set of options. You could definitely code this to do a whole bunch of other stuff if you wanted to and attach it to other keyboard commands. So the question now is, what do we do with this character now that we have him set up? What kind of mischief can we get him up to? Well, there's a few things you can do. Number one, you could use him to narrate other video projects that you've created. So you could record this screen and then import it into a video editor and do something cool with that. So to do that, you have to record your screen. Now there's all kinds of screen recorder software out there, but there's one that used to be built into Scratch in version 2.0, and it got taken out in version 3, but fortunately the guys over at the Scratch add-ons project, something I've plugged before here, have a plugin called Project Video Recorder, and if you enable that in your Scratch add-ons, which you can get from the Chrome Web Store, I'll have a link down below, then you can use the screen recording that's built right into Scratch here. You'll see that it actually sets up a recorder here, and you can tweak it so that it works so that it starts recording automatically when you click the green flag and stops when you click stop, and get a little video file that you can import into your video editor. So that's number one thing you can do with it. Number two, you can use something called a virtual camera. So what you can do is set up a piece of software. There's a couple that I would suggest, software that's designed for streaming on the web. I use a piece of software called Streamlabs to do all my live streaming. It's what I'm using right now. There's another project that's a simpler version of that called OBS, Open Broadcast Software. And both of those will work beautifully to create virtual cameras for yourself. So I'll give you a quick overview. This isn't a lesson on how to use Streamlabs, but let me just show you quickly what I would do if I was going to put myself into a Zoom call with this character. So this is Streamlabs OBS. It's the free software that I use to set up my recordings and live streams on YouTube. It's basically a video production studio in a box. It lets you lay different layers on top of each other with your video webcam feed, your screenshots, videos and other stuff, and text, and lets you go between them in different kinds of scenes that allow you to do different stuff. You can see here, for example, I'm just set up for tutorials here. I've got my webcam input that I can move around wherever I want and lay stuff on top of each other, and I can do all kinds of fun stuff like that with this, like switch to other screens where other stuff is happening, and different kinds of setups here depending on what it is I'm looking to film. So what we're going to do here is I want to basically set it up so that nothing is visible on the screen except for my own avatar here. So I'm going to hide myself in the webcam view here, and I'm going to click on this background layer here called Display Capture, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key so that I can reshape this box. And I'm just going to reshape it so that nothing is visible in here other than my avatar character. Then I'm just going to drag the edges out and make it fill up the entire screen. There we go, looking good. All right, and so from here, I just have to turn on my virtual camera. So down in the bottom left, you'll see the preferences. I'm going to click on that, and you'll see that one of the options here is virtual webcam. I'm going to start my virtual webcam. And so now there is a webcam that's going to be available inside of Zoom here, which we're running right now. And if I go to my settings, you can see that under video, I've selected my OBS camera as the camera that I'm going to be recording off of. And you can see the preview in the preview here that, yes, indeed, sorry, we are seeing what's on the screen here. I've got some other stuff covering it up. So yeah, there's my what my Zoom call is going to look like. We can actually get a Zoom call going here. So here I am inside of Zoom now, and you can see that I phoned myself, and the person who I'm calling, my desktop computer, is actually this animated Scratch character who I can do all the fun stuff with here and move around and pretend as if he's a real participant in the Zoom call. So I think that's really cool. So I wanted to explore this project today mostly as a way of kind of fiddling around and seeing if this was possible at all. It turns out in practice that it's a little trickier to pull off than you might think. OBS is fairly sophisticated software, and if you haven't used it before, you might have some difficulty setting things up. There's also the problem of needing multiple monitors. It's just very difficult to lay out your Zoom page and your Scratch page and OBS all inside a single monitor in such a way that everything's going to look professional. If you get OBS running on one screen, often you get issues like this going on, where you're recording yourself, and things get really complicated quickly. So this is probably a more advanced application of this little tool here, but I do think all of you guys have the technical know-how to be able to record your screen and take this video and put it into your own video projects. I can't wait to see what you guys make with this. I think it would be really cool to add this to another video and really impress your teacher with your ability to make cartoons. So that's it for this tutorial. I'll be back again next week with more great Scratch content. And as always, my live streams are Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern. See you there.